Today we're here at Barely Arts. I'm going to introduce you to my friend Jeremy Su, who's going to hang with us today and talk to us all about his business. We're going to talk about his marketing tactics, what he sells, and how he got started. And he has a really interesting take on some of the marketing he's done because they also have a nonprofit tied to their business, which I think is going to be really interesting to see how that meshes together and works together. So let's go in and meet Jeremy. We met, for people who are watching, this is such a random connection, but we met at score.org, both volunteering. If you're looking for, what do they call them? Mentors?
Mentors, yeah.
If you're looking for mentors, free mentors, score.org is a great resource. There are a lot of people, seasoned people.
Seasoned veteran types of people who have been either ex-CFOs, ex-CEOs. I don't know if you met, I think Larry too was an ex-CFO or CPA that had his own company for like 20 years. He was the one that had this special face detection recognition training and things like that. For the IRS back in the day. So there's a lot of good people at Score, especially people that have been in it for a long time.
And that's where we met, both volunteering there. But I wanted to come here today and then just chat with you, mostly really to help other people, budding entrepreneurs, just get an inside look, a behind the scenes look at your company and what it takes to build a company of this sort. And we'll dive into what it is. And I know you have kind of a number of different arms and a few businesses that you guys run, but I'd love to just focus on Barely Arts. Tell us what Barely Arts is and how you guys started into it.
Yeah, absolutely, So Barely Art was a company that all kind of came out of the whole Amazon craze, right? So we originally were Amazon sellers. We're kind of doing different things. We're playing around with the wholesales and branding.
What year was this?
This was about 2016, 2017, somewhere in there. And so we're just kind of playing with different things and trying to figure it out. So we noticed very quickly that Amazon was not the place to be long term.
Why was that?
At the time, it was basically just because Amazon was trying to kick everyone out. If you're in the wholesale business model, Amazon wanted to be the one there. You have to submit receipts to them, right? You have to submit all these different things on the wholesale side where they can basically go and take your distributors.
So you were selling to Amazon as a 1P seller, selling wholesale to them, or?
Yes, and at the time we didn't have any types of strategies or things. We're just kind of finding opportunities through liquidations. Right, so that's kind of where I jumped on. Now, my business partner Matthew started even further back, just flipping cell phones, and we met in college actually for in mechanical engineering, and then that's where that kind of developed. I was like, hey, what are you doing? Let's do something.
Yeah.
So we always kind of had the private label or the branding side of things in mind. And one of the things that we were trying to figure out is like, well, what is it that we actually want to do, right? What are the opportunities that are out there and what do we want to compete in? And we kind of ended up in the arts and crafts world, not because we were any particular crafty people, but we were engineers. So we kind of understood that world and we saw it as a good, there's a lot of good opportunities here that engineering thinking could really kind of help out crafting. Right?
Got it.
Because when it comes to crafting, they're artists, right? And they're great at what they do. And the thing is that with a little bit of an engineering tweak to it, then it's like, well, we know how to make it better. We know how to make it more efficient. We know how to make it amazing, right? And from that, we kind of came across, well, let's make this glue product, right? And in the beginning, the glue product was just going to be just another product that we had. We'll call it Barely Art, right? It was just something else that we were looking to do, not really anything that we were trying to grow at the time. Well, then it exploded and everything changed.
Yeah, and so when it did explode, were you selling as a third-party seller, doing FBA fulfillment on Amazon, or was it selling to Amazon as a first-party seller and then them selling it? Which one were you?
Yeah, so it was all FBA, right? And so because of our experience beforehand, we had already learned we did not want to deal with vendor. We did not care about vendor central. When it comes down to it, they're really capitalizing on people and manufacturers that don't know what they're doing.
So you did do some early on vendor central 1P selling?
I misunderstood what you said earlier. No vendor central.
No vendor
all
central.
FBA.
All FBA.
Yeah. So we always kept everything in house. Always had our own warehouses and things, but we bought wholesale from other companies and then sold them off.
Got it.
And usually they were liquidation, so we didn't have a lot of people fighting over buy box listings
Got
and
it.
things like that. Yeah.
So a lot of people, before we get too far into the story, a lot of people always ask me, and I'm sure you as well, is like they want to sell on Amazon or they want to sell something online and they don't know what to sell. How did you, I mean, you kind of briefly said you stumbled into arts and crafts, but how did you actually figure out that glue is what you're going to start selling?
That's a funny story because the story behind that is really we're just looking at competitors in different fields. Honestly, we first started with a toilet paper cloud shelf, and then we had some other things called busybody bands that were supposed to be for basically fidget devices for kids. There was a lot of things that happened before Barely Art, and I think one of the things that kind of that helps people kind of understand it is that your first idea is never your best idea.
So you had a bunch of ideas kind
there
of
were
laid
other
out.
ideas that
And
were
you
in
did
the
a lot of
wings.
liquidation.
There was a lot of liquidation.
Yeah.
So because of the liquidation side of it and our wholesale side, we kind of knew different markets. It was scattered, don't get me wrong. We
Right.
had tons of different markets. We were in automobile and some arts and crafts too. And we're selling, one of our most popular things that we sold were razors at one point, and basically everything that you had in Walmart is something that we had sold at some point in time, just through liquidations. We had hundreds of SKUs. Now we've got a handful of SKUs.
Right. And so when you went to the glue and went to the arts and crafts and created Barely Arts and kind of came up with that product line, how did you kind of narrow down what were the factors? Was it a price point? Was it margin? Was it customer feedback? What helped you realize that that's a good one to go with?
So the main thing was the response and the marketing. Like the biggest thing that I have, and I would say for every Amazon seller, if you're interested in selling for Amazon specifically, please do not consider yourself only just selling on Amazon, because that is super problematic in this day and age. You know, back 2014, yeah, sure, Amazon stuff all over the place, just throw it up there, it'll sell.
Right.
In today's day and age, you really have to concentrate on that branding aspect of it. It's what are you doing beyond Amazon, because it's just a race to the bottom, right? Nowadays, you put something up on Amazon, someone else can just come in and copy it exactly. If it was so easy for you to contact someone in China to do something, it's just as easy for someone else to be your competitor.
So that's a real good point about diversifying off of Amazon. When did you do that, and how did you kind of think through that? Because there's a ton of Amazon sellers right now who think, I can't, like, how would I sell anything on my own site or elsewhere? I'm kind of stuck on Amazon, and I feel the pain, and I feel all the troubles of listings gone wrong or hijackings that happen. What did you do to kind of unlock your mindset to say, we need to go elsewhere, and how did you make that transition?
Yeah, so the first part of that question is the easy part is basically, how do we know to get out? Well, we felt the pain. Just straight up. From all of our other experience, we felt the pain immediately. And so we knew at the beginning, like, we need to protect our listings, right? We need to make sure that we're doing the branding. So from the get-go, what we realized was Amazon was going to be our vehicle for revenue, but we were going to do whatever we could to pull it off Amazon, right? To actually acquire our customers, because Amazon doesn't care. Amazon doesn't know your customers, or they think that all of your customers are their customers, right? You don't have access to them. You don't have email lists. You have nothing, right? You just know their name sometimes, right? Especially with FBA.
Yeah.
And so the pivot and the transition was a slow one. We started going. Matthew was really good in terms of trying to get all of the information of Amazon and the keyword ranking and things for Amazon going. So he headed up that part of it, making sure we were solid on Amazon. What I focused then was the branding and the marketing side of it. So what happened after that was taking all that information from that and figuring out, how do we actually pull these people off? What is it about Barely that makes us different and unique? And we knew that we only had a short window, because as soon as we got popular, someone was going to copy it. And if someone copied it, then the next thing that's going to happen is that it's a race to the bottom. It's just price wars and everything else, and you can't compete with China on that.
So branding, you mentioned that a couple times now, that branding was really important to get off of Amazon. Yeah. What are the things that you feel create a brand? Like what's the actual work that somebody has to do to work on that brand? Because a lot of people just think, I already have a logo and I already have, a nice font and a color palette. Yeah. Like what could be more than that?
Right. Yeah, and that's the part that is the hardest part to really wrap your mind around, is that, like you said, yeah, it's nothing to do with, or yes, it does have things to do with the logos and how you present yourself and the information you put out there and things, but it's really what you're boiling it down to is an intangible ability for someone to feel something when they hear your brand. And that's the key part of it that I think is missing. Like when it comes down to when they hear Nike, when they hear Apple, you have something associated with that, right? And if they can't recognize you by your name, you're not a brand, right? Yeah. Especially in your niche. So now Barely Art's to the point of everyone in this niche, and specifically it's party decor makers, it's scrapbookers, it's card makers. Everyone in those niches already know of Barely Art. They might love it, they might hate it, right? But they know the name that's associated with it already. And so that's where you're trying to get to. Once people understand that and you can just say a name in the right community, they'll know you. That's when you actually have the brand.
People starting or wanting to start a business, whether it's selling on Amazon and eventually transitioning to their own brand direct to consumer, or any small business, a lot of people just don't know how much it actually takes to get started. Right. For you guys with Barely Arts, what was the initial investment? The
initial investment was practically nothing. I mean, one of the things that I recommend for all of my mentees as well is that you have to prove out the concept first. If you're going all in on anything, it's way too risky, right? If you're throwing a bunch of money at something, you have to be able to afford to lose the investment, right? If you can't do that, then you can't really go anywhere else with it.
And so how much for you guys, do you remember how much that initial investment was?
I want to say we're sitting maybe around $1,000 for the first bit of it, but it was basically at the time was something that we were really able just to afford to lose, that it really didn't matter to us. And what we did with that is we tested. We started, and we have some B-roll too, we started filling glue ourselves. We bought a barrel of glue that we had made, and we worked with the manufacturer that said, hey, we're going to help you out. Here's a sample, right? So we got a barrel of glue, we started filling things and using them in different situations and started marketing from that. Marketing was just all free social media, right? And we kind of grew the brand that way, and we made adjustments as we went along. As we got feedback from customers, we were able to make bigger investments in things and change the product around. The product itself has actually changed. The actual product has changed over the years, and it's still not quite done.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and that's a good point, is like starting somewhere at the budget you can afford at least gets you going. Yes. And then from there you're iterating the product, which sounds like that's what you're doing.
Yes, and so the iteration of it is always kind of the thing where, like, the iteration and the branding piece, people seem to really want to get dogmatic because that's all they hear. Like, they always hear, like, well, you have to have exactly the same font on everything, the same typeface, the same customer base, you have to know all of that at the beginning. Well, you don't. I mean, the only way you're going to know that is if you spend a bunch of money into marketing ahead of time and paid a bunch of people already to give you that information. But in this case, you don't. And you can't, the other thing is that you can't really be dogmatic and say that you were right once, because you're probably not.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So you guys had humble beginnings, and how many years did you go on kind of from, because you started in 2016, was that right?
It's like 2016, 17. Barely Art by itself eventually became its own company around 2019.
Got it.
So then that's when we did the full split of everything from what we did, because again, Barely Art was just another product to us at the time. Once we actually did the full split, we pulled it apart, then it was much easier for us to then actually run Barely Art as its own separate entity, grow up its following, and get everything else that we needed.
From when you started in 16, you eventually figured out the product, you started growing, you kind of split it off to be its own thing. How have you seen growth happen over the past few years? However you want to put it, in terms of how many times you grew, or how many X you're bigger, or revenue-wise?
Sure. I mean, well, to answer that question, it's basically infinite, right? I mean, that's really what it came down to, because we had nothing. I mean, we were engineers, but it took a long time for us to actually just quit, right?
Yeah.
Like, and that whole process of it too, of really trying to figure out when is the right time to leave something that is safe for something that is.
And so you're talking about your job.
Right.
Yeah, and full time. And so your previous job to doing this was
mechanical engineering.
And how much were you making as a mechanical engineer?
Mechanical engineering puts you, starting salaries at the time were around about 50-ish thousand. Starting salaries now, you're 70, 80, that type of thing. So the opportunity of that was something that was really kind of off. And at the time, to be completely frank, when I quit, I wasn't making that. We weren't pulling that out. What we were pulling was enough to live on. Yeah. That's what it was. Because the freedom of having your own company and the freedom of being able to choose what you want to do was what was more powerful to us and what we wanted to do. And we wanted to build something that was more powerful than just having a safe job. Yeah. But no job's safe, as you and I know.
Yeah. That's really
being on the other end.
Yeah, it's a tough leap to make too.
It is.
It's a tough thing to do, and sounds like you guys were able to navigate that and are enjoying the fruits of that decision. So yeah. Good one on that.
Sure, yeah.
When you were growing, Jeremy, I think one of the hardest things that entrepreneurs have is kind of understanding what it takes to grow. And for us, it was people. Right. And it was bringing people on. Right. For you guys, how did that look, and when did you actually make the move to start hiring people?
Right. Well, the growth part of it was, for us, a very easy decision. Because essentially, well, what does it look like when you're first starting an e-commerce business? Well, you have to have product. Okay, that's pretty easy. And then you have to be able to ship that product. Okay, well, when you don't want to do that anymore, what do? You gotta get more people in. And so that's kind of what happened for us is, when it comes to like physically growing, right, the company and branding itself, we've always had, people have always been the forefront of everything, right? And even now, right, it's how do we find the right people in order to fulfill these tasks? And for us, it's really about diving into each individual section and kind of modifying things and understanding what it is that each organization or each part of the company does, and learning that enough so that we can then manage those people. We don't have to be perfect at it, right? Yeah. We just have to know, because we can't just get into something and be like, yes, you're going to sit here and do social media. Right. You're going to sit here and you're going to do marketing. Well, what does that mean? What are the processes that are involved? Well, you can figure that out. No, that's a terrible way to run a company, right?
So when you're hiring people, the transition from like doing to getting other people to do, I found really tough. and making that transition. Was it easy for you guys in terms of hiring, or what were some of the challenges faced when you went from starting something to then hiring a team and hiring? How many people now do you guys employ?
So here we have about 10 people in-house, and then we have 3 VAs and an intern that are somewhere else.
Got it. And so the challenges, what did you face, or what have you found difficult when it comes to scaling and hiring people?
Well, the difficult part of it all is for us, it was really the thing that I talked about before is just figuring out the systems part of it. And there's a kind of a mental jump as well that you have to make. Like there's 2 big mental jumps, and one of them I'm still making. The first mental jump is like, okay, realizing that the work that you have can be replaced, right? That's a mental jump. And you don't have your hands in every little thing anymore, right? So it's giving up that control. So for me, I feel more safe when I have control, right? And so it's giving up like the little things, right? The next jump is giving up departments, right? And that was kind of the bigger leap for me, is like, well, how do I give up a department? Like, I'm not going to be in the day-to-day of a department. Like, that seems like really rough. And that's currently the one that I'm focusing now, is the marketing side of things. How do I design myself out of the department? How do I give everyone else here the tools that they need in order to grow the company without having to come to me for everything, right? Because it's if you're doing it the other way around, which a lot of people do, just design themselves jobs, right? And if you design yourself a job, then you kind of get stuck in that mentality of this is a job. And it's not good for your employees because they can't go anywhere with that. Right. They're stuck at where they are. Right. Why not bring opportunity to people? Why not inspire people to grow and develop themselves? And that's where my kind of passion is really on the team building aspect of it, and trying to make sure that people feel like they have that mobility to go up, that they feel that they can learn the things that they want to, if they want to grow in another department, which has happened a couple of times, we move things around for them, right?
How do you know you have enough money to hire people? I think because a lot of entrepreneurs, at least when I started, it was how much is in the bank account, and it never felt like enough, and you're always planning for taxes. And how did you know when it comes down to it that you could afford to hire someone?
Mm-hmm. Well, it depends on the position itself and what it is that you're doing. But essentially what it came down to is, what is your time worth to yourself, right? And that's kind of the question that I asked, is like, is my time right now worth hiring someone else for? What would I get back? And so it's this constant battle. For me, it's a constant battle of, okay, well, I'm going to spend all my time in this thing for right now. But then what does it cost for me to get my time back, right? Is it worth a full-time salary, right, for whatever position it is? Or is it worth getting someone part-time or having an intern, right? What does it take for me to completely remove myself from that task? And you kind of, when it comes down to it, it's 2 things. One, it's when you're sick of it, right? And for a lot of entrepreneurs, they get sick of things very quickly. And 2, what it really comes down to is just the cost, the actual cost itself, right? So, working back in the warehouse and things, right? What is $15 an hour or something like that? What does that mean to you as an owner, right? What does that number actually mean when it comes to you not doing it anymore? Right?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and if you can afford to hire, you're good to go.
We talked a little bit about hiring, but what I was really interested to come today to talk about was, I know early on you had started this idea called Cards for Cubs. Yes. And it seemed really interesting because you were having great success on the social front, being able to curate a community focused around kind of this idea of giving. Tell us what that's about.
Yeah, so this was not my idea, I'll put it that way. The reason I say that is because it was a collective idea amongst our customer base as a whole. And the reason I say that is because what we noticed when we started Barely Art is that there was a huge willingness to give back to the community. And what it takes, and people don't realize, it only takes one person to facilitate that. Usually there's a lot of people that are out in the world that really want to do something and want to do something good, but there's no leaders to actually take them and organize them into something. So yes, we organized it, but when you look at this, when you look at 48,000 cards here, this is not my doing.
Right. And these cards are for who? Who are people making these cards for?
So all these cards are made for kids that are in foster care. So we're talking everywhere from very young newborns all the way up to 18 and sometimes even 21, depending on where they are in the system. And so what we did is we took that collective effort and we put just a social media post out there. We had probably like 200 followers on Instagram, very, very humble beginnings type of thing. And we asked, and we just said, well, we want to have a card drive, right? And we didn't even know who to give cards. So we just said, well, we know there's just so much generosity. Let's do something with it. And so Matthew's wife was actually a social care worker at the time. And so she had connected the idea. It's like, well, why don't you do it for kids in foster care? And so it was from that key pivot, we're like, okay, yeah, I think we can do that. I think we can do the switch. And so we put the post out there. We asked people, hey, we're going to be doing this thing. All you have to do is just mail us your cards. We'll handle everything else. You don't have to worry about it. Okay, well, apparently that was the right thing to say, because the next thing we know, we ended up with 7,000 cards that first year on a 200-person Instagram, right, with very little following and a brand new product.
And what has it grown into today?
Today, as of this year, it's 48,000 cards just for this last 2 months.
Wow.
So in total, the year before that, we're about 42,000 cards. Before that was about 7. So we're right about 100,000 cards in total.
And how has that grown your social media accounts?
Yeah, for sure. Like, that part of it is people want to get behind something, right? And people want to be able to feel like they're doing something purposeful, and they want to have something to work towards. And as far as growing social media accounts, it's a nice byproduct, right? And the thing is because of all the donations that we've gotten it to, Cards for Cubs is now its own 501c3 officially, and now it's separate from Barely Art.
Yeah.
And so the reason we did that too is to show that people get a little funny when a for-profit company is doing something like this. Like, well, what are you getting out of it? Well, we're not getting anything out of it, but it's hard to convince people. Right. Now it's really easy because we're official, we're governmental.
Yeah, that's amazing, and I think, the byproduct, or I get what you're saying, how you separate that, but at the same time, a brand that stands for something is rewarded.
Yes.
And it might not have been for that motivation to do it, but I think the byproduct of any good brand is that any good brand that is doing something of good out there are rewarded, that people want to get behind it. And I think that's a huge thing, as we talked about earlier, about transitioning off of Amazon and finding that community of people. You guys have obviously found something here where there's a lot of meaning behind it, and I think you guys have been heavily rewarded for it. So that's an amazing story to see all this mountain of goodness that's eventually going to get out there to kids and hopefully make them smile.
Yeah, the trick now is volunteers. So if anyone out there is in the DFW area, just saying, I'm trying to help you out, Grace, is sign up, cardsforcubs.org. Bring lots of people. We have systems already set up too, where you can basically have hours that will automatically be emailed to you too, so you just sign in, sign out. And we're open pretty much all normal business hours, 10 to 6. So just saying, you have volunteers.
Very cool. I also noticed, Jeremy, that you guys have your own YouTube and you've been going heavy onto live streams. Yeah. We're actually in the setting because I recognize it because I've watched some of your live streams. And what is that? What's the thought process behind doing live streams, and how has that helped your business?
Right, so really what it comes down to is finding every way and any way that we can in order to connect with our audience. Right? It's being in the world of our audience, right? Originally, I wasn't that much of a crafter. I was an engineer, which has some crafting tendencies, but I wasn't a paper crafter using glue. And really just trying to get into the mindset of what it means to craft something and to create something is what it was all about. And we strongly believe in giving back to the community. We strongly believe in trying to find ways to interact with the community, and lives seem to be a good way of doing that. You know, one of the things that we do is we have a lot of free designs on our website, and that's really what pulls everyone in. We don't care if you don't buy glue or whatever, right? But we've had, I think, about 20,000 people now sign up because we're offering just free goodies, right? Yeah. Free designs for things. We have our free lives and things that they can watch and see how things are done. And all that together is what really builds the brand. And that's something we were talking about before, is like, well, what does that brand mean? Well, this is what that brand means. It's all the extra things that you're doing that it's not just selling products.
Right, giving value. And I saw that on your website. You have all the SVG files that people can download. And do they load those into their cutters? Is that what it is?
Yeah. So you can take those, you can modify them, you can load them straight in, you can do lots of different things with them. And you can cut, you can create these types of cards, you can create cards for Cubs stuff too. And so that's what we're trying to do, is just really show people, here's how you use the products, right? And here's the different things that we have, and we made a huge portion of it free.
The number side of business. So finance and accounting. How do you guys manage all of that? Who does your books? Who helps you tax plan? How does that happen?
So that's the funny part of it, because that's the part we're just trying to get a handle of now, right? And we're still kind of struggling with trying to get a handle of all of that, because it's been so far on the back burner for us because of our growth. You know, at the time we're always focusing on the things that we're weakest in. Right? But the problem is that we were growing so quickly that honestly the numbers at the time didn't really matter. Like, could we afford something? Okay, great. Could we afford someone else? Okay, great. It was kind of this passive look at income. And it's only now that we've hired a fractional CFO, we have our CPA, and they're giving us a lot of extra feedback on, like, okay, well, guys, you got too much cash, right? Or guys, you got, we need to get out of this loan or whatever it is. Or hey, you need to hire someone here because it doesn't look like your numbers don't make a lot of sense. Or my favorite one is the, is there any way to cut down the 30% Amazon is taking from the top line? The answer is no. So yeah.
Good. What I'd love to ask you about is inventory, because inventory planning and from a company that's in kind of a high growth trajectory, the inventory demands can be pretty heavy. How have you guys felt that? Like, how much money is locked up in inventory? How do you guys plan your inventory?
Yeah, well, when it comes to inventory too, like we were, from a financial standpoint, up till like a year ago, we were on a cash by cash basis, right? So it didn't really matter. It went straight to COGS kind of thing, right? So, but now as we've remodified everything and been working with our CPA, now it's like, oh, well, now we have to keep really accurate inventory systems to really handle it. Honestly, at the time, it was a what's needed, right? We get a report back from Amazon, or we get a wholesale order in. What's needed? Okay, great. That's what we're doing this week, right? It's pretty simple to say, it's really simple to say, like, okay, I need 10 of these and 10 of those, and make 10 of these and 10 of those. And so when it came down to, well, now we have to be lean, right? Well, now we have to take on certain things, right? That whole side of it has been something that we're now exploring of, okay, well, we've got 200 grand sitting over there, right? Just in random products and things alone. Well, how do we kind of cut back on that? And that is our current strategy, or our current thing that we're trying to work on, is what do we do? Because again, we've always kind of been in this model of like, something happened, okay, great. Like, we've always had a lot of more sales, so we never had to worry. We're like, well, we need more, we need to order more. Okay, let's get more in. right? We're running low this month. Okay, well, then what do we do? And so on the back end of things, it's all just spreadsheets and craziness. It's only now, as of the last couple of months, that we've actually purchased an inventory system. Nice. It was a giant spreadsheet that I made that we ran off of for a couple of years. And it was a beefy spreadsheet. Don't get me wrong. There's about probably 1 million or hundreds of thousands at least of just line items of things going in, things going out, things going in, things going out, across hundreds of SKUs. And it's like, okay, well, we can't keep doing this if we want to grow. So we finally made an investment into our inventory systems.
We talk a lot about branding, Amazon selling and branding, and the importance of selling direct to consumer and not relying solely on Amazon. What does your split look like now, and what do you hope it will look like in the next couple of years?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. Right now we're roughly about 60% Amazon, 40% direct to consumer. That's about where we are. As of a year ago, or maybe 2 years ago now, we're closer at like 1090. So basically what it comes down to is we would love to just not have Amazon, like in general, just because Amazon by itself, it takes a lot and we can do all the fulfillment and things here. The problem is that there's a huge base of customer that is still on Amazon. And eventually what's going to end up happening, more than likely, is that Amazon will keep cutting into costs and things, and it's not going to be beneficial as a manufacturer to stay as just doing FBA, right? And it doesn't benefit us at all because we can't target people. We don't know who our customers are. We have no idea where they're coming from or what they're wanting, right? When they're coming to our site, we know that they're searching for these types of SVGs. We know that they're really interested in cards, right? Or we know that they're really interested in these types of products. And it makes it much easier on our end to be, oh, okay, we need to make leaps, or oh, we need to make a pivot this way, or maybe we shouldn't focus so much on this type of branding, and maybe we should kind of pivot more towards something else, right? And you just don't have that information. So what we'd hope to have eventually is as little on Amazon as feasibly possible, right?
Yeah.
Like I would love for Amazon to stay, as high revenue that it is, but I also really want to know who our customers are. Right, and you just don't know who that is. You don't have that feedback loop, so that's why a lot of Amazon businesses kind of just end up dying. Right.
Okay, we'll do some quick-fire questions, real short and sweet, because we've both been mentors at score.org.
Yes,
that's our kinship there, and we've had people ask us so many similar questions. And so not only there, but almost daily I get asked these kinds of questions.
Right,
okay, one, how much do you need to start a business online?
You need $100, really what it comes down to. If you don't know what to do, start flipping things. It's the easiest thing in the world, right? That's how Matthew started.
Should I quit my job or should I do it as a side hustle?
Never quit your job at the very beginning of things. Prove everything out first. Use an MVP, right? If you've ever read Lean Startup. Use a minimal viable product, test out the market yourself, and see if that actually works.
Got it. How much money could I make selling stuff online?
Infinite. You can make a lot of money.
Realistically, in a year, what would that range be? What do you think is something that we could actually give a number to? What would you say somebody average, middle of the road?
That's a very good question. And honestly, I don't know if I want to answer that question because really it comes down to one, how well you did your research, and two, how much you're willing to pivot on a day-to-day. Because what it comes down to is there's so much opportunity that's out there. Someone's going to do one thing and change the world, right? That's really what it comes down to. But other people aren't. And really what it comes down to that I've noticed, especially with our mentees, the ones that actually are succeeding and doing well are the ones that aren't afraid to make mistakes. The ones that are able to keep pushing past different barriers that they have and not to beat themselves up. Because really what it comes down to is business is all just this mental game. And you have to win that mental game with yourself in order to push past barriers.
Yeah. I had somebody ask me this just yesterday. I have a product. I think it's good. Mm-hmm. How do I know it's going to be good? Should I do it or not?
Okay, so product-wise, that's the fun one, is that you can have the best product in the world. We even learned this in engineering, which is pretty funny. You can have the best product in the world. If you have terrible marketing, it's never going to sell, right? So the answer is, are your customers going to buy? And who is your customer? Like deeply, intimately, who is your customer? What do they care about? Like I want to know every specific detail that you have about them. I want to know what they eat in the morning, right? If you can get to that point, then you know exactly who you're talking to. And not just from like a kind of sleazy marketing standpoint, but from like, how do you actually want to talk to them, right? If you don't know who they are, you can't talk to them at all.
Here's another question. I don't know anything about digital marketing. How do I learn?
YouTube. Here we go, right here. But in all seriousness, it really comes down to, most of the time, when it comes down to ideas of e-commerce and marketing and things, it's not that difficult. All of the basis and everything that's there and the values and everything is very simple. The concepts are simple, but really what makes it hard is people are like, well, need to know exactly what it is. Well, trust me, if you followed exactly what I did back then, today, you're going to fail, like just straight up. It's not going to work. And the reason it doesn't work is because it's very different world every single day. And so it's being creative in the things. It's knowing that, okay, I need to get customers somehow, right? Okay, well, what are ways that we can attract customers? For us, the answer was SVGs and free designs. For someone else, it could be ebooks or some type of free content or influencers or whatever. But really what it comes down to is trying to figure out all the little things and not being afraid to fail.
You have a partner, a co-founder. I had a co-founder, my brother. It worked out great for me. It seems like it's working great for you. What's your advice on whether or not somebody should find a co-founder, somebody to partner up with to start a business with?
Be very careful. Because 90% of partnerships are probably going to fail.
Why is that?
Mainly because when people partner, they're just partnering because they have similarities. The biggest thing that you want to concentrate on when you're looking for a partner is the same thing that you're looking for in a spouse. That's really what it comes down to. You're looking for similar value sets, you're looking for similar interests, and you're really looking for someone that's able to, when the hard times come, be able to work that out with you, not against you, right? And that's really what it's come down to for Matthew and I, is that the reason that our partnership works is because every time we hit a wall, we talk it out, right? We are very upfront with each other. You know, anytime that someone hurts the other person, not intentionally, but anytime that happens, it's working through those processes and things and not avoiding the topic at hand. And that's kind of where we see a lot of failures at, is because someone hit a wall.
Like right now.
Yeah, exactly. Like right now.
If you walk over there too, there's a really good view of the Cowboy Stadium. There's a sidewalk. You just walk straight through where it says backyard, right past there. There's a great view of the Cowboy Stadium. There's like a big water fountain. Yeah.
It's going to be the nicest place we have.
Before we have to move, to be honest.
Thanks for spending a ton of time answering all these questions. I think it's super valuable for people. For those that want to learn more about Barely Art or Cards for Cubs, where can they go to learn more about your guys' business?
Yeah, so go to our website. It's barely.arts, not .com. You can go to barelyart.com. It does go to the right place, but barely.arts and cardsforcubs.org. Those are the two places. And of course, we're on all the platforms: Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. Oh yeah, I forgot about TikTok as well.
Sweet. Well, that's it. Appreciate you guys hanging out with us. Thanks to Jeremy for answering so many questions. I hope that's inspiring and educational for you guys. Make sure to subscribe. And if you want to check out another video, look at this one right here, click on it, and you're going to love that interview. So go ahead and look at that. Click on that now, and we'll see you right there. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys in the next video.
Woo! Good job, man.